So a few weeks ago, I received a summons in the mail requiring me to go to court, the state of New Jersey against Harry Rothenberg, for the offense of failing to remove snow from in front of my house within 24 hours after it fell. So I went to court, explained to the judge that I was representing myself. She got a kick out of that. She said, "Mr. Rothenberg, do you own that property?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Did you fail to remove snow within 24 hours after it fell on such and such a date?" I said, "Your Honor, I'd like to think that that summons represents a critique of my snow removal ability, rather than a damnation of me for utterly failing to remove snow." So she laughed and she said, "Mr. Rothenberg, I don't know if I can accept your guilty plea if you're not willing to admit that you were guilty of this offense." I said, "Your Honor," keeping in mind that all I wanted to do was pay my $100 fine so I could get to work. I said, "Your Honor, I have satisfied myself, having met the housing inspector here today, that our fine city would never employ somebody in such an important job who wasn't fully qualified. So I am certain that if this housing inspector who's here next to me says that I didn't remove snow within the mandate of the statute, then I'm guilty as charged." So she accepted the plea, I paid my fine plus some court costs, and I went off to work. But I will admit, having been chastened by the experience and reprimanded, that the next time I shoveled snow, as careful as I always am because I know how dangerous snow and ice are as a personal injury attorney, after paying that summons and getting hauled into court, I was more careful. So I couldn't help but think while reviewing this week's Torah portion of Mishpatim, which contains so many dozens of laws, so many of which form the basis of our civil and criminal justice systems in the free world, that if you violate some laws, like killing or kidnapping or stealing, in addition to the problem you're going to have with God, you're going to get hauled into court. Or if you violate certain other laws and you're negligent and you injure someone, again, in addition to your problem with God, you're going to have a problem with me or one of my fellow personal injury attorneys. But what if you violate one of the other laws? What if you lie? What if you curse your parents? What if you fail to return a lost object? You're not going to receive a summons from a civil or a criminal court. And I was thinking, maybe you should. Wouldn't that improve our religious observance? And on the same day that I was thinking that, my wife and I received the type of phone call that no parent ever wants to get or should get. We were told that one of our children was injured in a skiing accident. And so I jumped in my car and I went straight to the trauma center that they were taking him. And originally the paramedic told me they were taking him by ambulance. But I found out that when I got there that he was actually on his way by helicopter, which certainly sounded much more serious. You can only imagine the abject terror of a parent waiting in the hospital for the sound of those rotor blades to land on the roof, not knowing what kind of condition my son was in. And I couldn't help but think, be careful what you wish for. Maybe that was my summons from heaven. I know what Maimonides says, that sometimes to get our attention or to punish our children under the age of bar or bas mitzvah can get injured or can get ill. And so I couldn't help but think what maybe God's telling me is that I had to examine my own failings or inadequacies. And I know they were mine if that's what was going on, although no one ever knows why God does a particular thing. But I know that I'm married to a saint. So if that was the reason, it had to be my fault, not my wife's. Thank God. All the tests were negative. My son is fine and he will be fine. But I just hope that I'll use that opportunity. And anyone else who has that misfortune of getting a call like that or being in a situation like that, or God forbid worse, will use that as a prod and realize that that's your heavenly summons. That's the time when you're being asked to examine your own actions, to make sure that you're maximizing your relationship and that you're living up to God's own expectations for you and your own potential.